Okay, my last video card went full before I can finish. Trying to decide. Should I start all over or just continue? Well, let's just quickly start over. I'll try to make this quick and short so I can upload this. 3 white dial watches. We got the Sinn 104i STSA right here with the white dial. We have the NTH Nazario Sauro right here. This is the second version of the Nazario line, which they made, and has a full Lume dial. They're on their fifth iteration right now, which just came out at this time. But anyways, this is the Zelos GMT, Horizons GMT, if I'm saying it correctly. This is version 2 of the Horizons GMT line. This is one of the newer colorways, and they made some kind of minor tweaks to the design, so I think it reads better, and might have changed slightly some things with the case or crystal or the insert possibly. I think it's more legible. It doesn't look as, it used to look like it was cut off like at the top or the bottom of the numbers, like it didn't quite fit. Maybe they were even more faint or smaller or something. I don't know. They didn't read as strong, but this one comes off pretty good. Yeah, so I think I just happen to have these 3 by chance. This is on loan from a friend. I might get it. I'm trying to decide right now. I should only keep 1 white dial watch, and I think I want to keep this, but this is not running the best, unfortunately. It's a bit slower than I want it. This one's not too bad, and actually so far this one's the most accurate. I'm just gonna run through whatever comes to my head. This is basically running on a Swissetta 2893-2 elaborate grade. This happens to have still have the if we can focus here, still happens to have the decoration on the movement, whereas the version 2, I'm not sure what the reasoning is, but whatever Ocean had purchased did not come with decorations as this one does, with the perlage work and everything. So that's a nice bonus, that this is probably some of the last remaining ones that from the previous run of Horizons GMT that still had a fully decorated movement. So you'll notice that some people that have this particular version or some other ones from the V2 line of the Horizons GMT will have a plain undecorated movement, and they cost the same. So you just might get it out of the lucky pick of the bunch, whatever you get, right? Since this is in hand, 40 millimeters, although really the bezel is actually more like 38.5 according to the specs online, and that's why. And they do this with a lot of the watches. I notice their cases are actually a bit larger, but they tend to shrink the bezel down a little bit smaller. I had this with effect with my Zelos Horizons 2. I think it was supposed to be a 42, but it really looked smaller, like a 40, because that bezel was actually smaller than the case. So anyways, lug to lug, I believe is 47 or 46. But I believe it's the shortest of all of these. 20 millimeters, and lug and thickness. Without the crystal is 11. With the crystal, this has 2.5 millimeters. So that's actually 13.5, but you rarely measure or see the visual weight of a crystal on wrist, so you're really going to see this thickness. And so 11 millimeters is pretty good and thin for something like this, right? And go to the Sinn and 104, and this is 41 millimeters. I believe it's 47.5 or so. Lug to lug, so a little bit wider. I think it's actually 46, maybe 46 and a half. Anyways, 20 millimeters as well. Thickness is 11.5. Alright, and this is well, I talked about the movement. This is, I believe it's using the SW200 or some version of that. It's got a little bit of decoration on the movement. You kind of see it's not completely plain, but it's you know, other than that, I guess it's kind of basic for what it is. And now we'll go to automatically focus. No, sorry, every time I hit the camera it'll shake a little to get the focus. Anyways, 40 millimeters. Lug to lug is at least 47, maybe 47.5. Sorry, I looked at the specs earlier, but I can't look it up right now because I'm on my phone. Anyways, they're all pretty comparable. Not very long, definitely under 48 millimeters, if not at most 48. But I don't remember seeing 48, so I'm pretty sure that it's less than that on any of these three models. Anyways, thickness total is 11.5, and no exhibition case back. And this is using a Miyota movement. Most people, it's a date, obviously no date, so it's not using a 9015, but it is using still 9000 series, and they always write it as a 990S5, which is unusual because that's the only time I really hear that of a no date Miyota in the 9000 series. Usually most people will use a Miyota 9039, if I'm not mistaken. That's a no date version of the 9015. So what's the difference? I don't know. They seem to be the same because I've had watches with a 9039, I'm getting tongue tied. Yeah, I think it's 9039 before, and they seem to work the same power reserve and whatnot. Sweep, you know, the 28,000 or so vibrations per minute. So yeah, so a smooth sweep. So if you compare these two, by the way, this is not really a review. It's just me comparing three white dial watches from fairly popular brands, NTH, Sinn, and Zelos. Just while I have these watches, just for fun, really. So, you know, these are supposed to be the same thickness, but this looks thinner, doesn't it? Well, the one thing, this is more angular, and also it's more straight, versus this is I think the mid case on this is still a little thinner, and it's also got some beveling, so it adds to some sort of, well, I guess slightly on the bottom as well, which this one really doesn't. So that kind of shaves away or hides some of the weight. Also makes it look a little bit thinner as well. Just to compare 13.5 with the crystal compared to 11. Big difference, but you take that off, this is supposed to be 11 millimeters. Yeah, it still looks thicker than this one, even though this is technically thicker if you're just looking at the metal, right? Between the two. Go figure. And even see against something like the Zen, it may seem a little closer. They're right next to each other. Yeah, maybe, but still, I don't know, maybe that crystal, even though you're trying to ignore it, it's still throwing the weight off a bit. And I'm just gonna turn them around, kind of compare them at different angles similarly. And let's compare this. So on these two, you got female links. Oh no, sorry, male links. Which is not a big deal because naturally, I think on most wrists, unless you're really skinny, like somehow less than this, I mean, the bracelet naturally kind of comes out and flows this way anyways, right? Even with like a female, it doesn't just drop straight down anyways. Most wrists, it should usually come out a little bit, right? Just kind of runs out like that. So I don't know. Some people make a big deal of the male ones, but I can handle both. It's fine. None of these have any they have micro adjustments, but they don't have like a toolless system. Unfortunately, this was made before Zelos started making their newer clasp system that looks like Christopher Ward's, which has the internal toolless system where you push the button on the one. You gotta open this up, on the inside of the clasp, and you can pull the bracelet out a bit, and then push it in to ratchet it back down to get the perfect fit. But usually when I find the sweet spot, I'm good with that. I rarely even need to adjust the tightness of the watch when my hands swell or I guess don't swell, get thinner. These both have similar clasp system, which is not surprising since they're micro brands. So they're not 100%. Well, actually, come on, focus here. They're practically the same build, but anyways, not a big deal. Yeah, I think they work great still. This is a butterfly system, so no real micro adjusts, and I don't think they actually have any half links of these. But out of all these two, even though this does have pretty nice beveling, I mean they're all solid links too, but this has nice, let me focus here, beveling on right on the edge of the links, so it's a little bit smoother. As not like these are sharp, but it's definitely just a gentler touch. Whereas this is not, but it's not hard. What else can I say? Bidirectional, 60 click countdown bezel. It's like on ball bearings. No play. Can you hear that? I really like the action of this one. This also has a bidirectional bezel, which is good for a GMT. It's also, I believe, on a ball bearing system, but I don't think it's nearly as refined as the Sinn. The grip is kind of problematic. It's not the best grip, to be honest. It could use a little bit more grippiness, protrusion, or something, some texture, just a little bit more, so that you can grip it better. I mean, it's all right, but it's not as positive and smooth as that. This one maybe even feels like it has ever so slight bit of friction to it when you're turning it, and there is a bit of play even with the ball bearing system. See, and though this is a 48 clicks, you can set it to half-hour increments as well, for whatever time zone you're trying to track. But even though it has a little bit of slack, it's not enough to throw off your whatever you plan to line this up with. Because with 48 clicks, you're going to be within specific, pretty close to where you need to be where you're setting it. And this is a unidirectional bezel, because this is more of a dive watch. NTH makes some great bezels. You don't have to have a real thick grip, but there's just enough here, and it's got just enough, I guess, sharpness, or just grip on that grips easily, and it sounds great slow or fast, and there's no real play to this. And everything lines up perfectly. This is great on this example. What I was gonna say, I think these are all about the same rough power reserve. 30 hours more or less, right? This you have a day and date. This one just a date at the 6th, and this is a no date. This is completely monochromatic, although they have a new limited edition version that has a red seconds hands, but I don't like it. It just kind of sticks out too much, and maybe I've just gotten used to the just plain and simple monochromatic black and white of this version, which I think looks better than adding an accent color, which really isn't necessary. And it's just, I don't know, in some ways it's a silly thing to call that a limited edition just because of the red seconds hands. But anyways, what was I going to say about this? Oh yeah, so it has a date down here, centered, so you can maintain dial symmetry, and this obviously no date. Lume, this is completely BGW9, so it's all blue where you see white, full lume dial, as well as the hands on the tail end of that seconds, and all the white indication there. Try to do a lume shot at the end. This one is mixed. Most of it is BGW9, practically everything that you see in white. The only things that aren't are the applied indices for the hours, the minute and hour hand, but the GMT hand remains blue as well. And so whatever you see white in here is blue, and then it's reversed, so you get this kind of blue band on the bottom here. Pretty cool. I think it's a nice, mostly monochromatic way to represent night and day, right? Black and white. Pretty cool. You don't see it too often, though there is a relatively new Seiko GMT, I think under the Grand Seiko line, possibly Prospex LX, but either way, there's one that's really nice, and I forget the dial color. I think it's blue, but for sure, was it white? I can't even remember. But what stood out to me was that it had like a blue upper, but then it was white on the bottom. I don't know, it looked really good. I don't remember the reference number, but some of you might know. This one, oh yeah, so sapphire bezel insert. That's the other difference. This is probably aluminum, I believe, on the Zinn. And this is actually stainless steel. You can get some of these subs with a more colored bezel, but I like this kind of steel look. And what I was going to say, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, this one's just strictly black and white, which is nice. I like that. No nonsense, just plain black and white. These two with the white dials also have color accents. This one's primarily red as the accent color. Again, I apologize for the shaking camera because it's on an unstable platform, and every time I hit the screen to focus, obviously it moves. And this one has orange, and you can see it in the 24-hour track on the inside, or rather the outer edge of the dial, right? And actually this might show up as kind of the same, but this is actually more red. The depth rating on the bottom here, it's actually red, but it looks like it's orange. But according to my eyes, it's definitely red in real life. So just make a note of that if you have actually seen this before. And let's do a quick fish shot by man. See, so this one deploys. Try to get a step back. Hopefully, I have time to do this. This is on my left wrist is, which I wear a watch on, is 6.875. So I think just under an 1/8 inch under a 7-inch wrist. There we go. And of course, this should naturally wear pretty good on a modest wrist size. Get back and see if I can like that. And I like to wear, or at least with my wrist, just below the wrist bone. Like, actually, sometimes it'll be bracelet might be actually in line with the center of it, but I never go past that. That's just me. That's the way I wear it. It works for me. Oops. Sorry, but didn't drop from too far high. Deploy it. Sorry about the fingerprints. Since this watch is primarily high polish, that's just the way it's going to be. No, it's not an earthquake. Sorry about that. Okay. And there we go. 41 millimeters. Still got a little bit more presence, but see if we can back up. Get this in focus from that far. But it's not, you know, it wears really good for a 41. I mean, look at, there's no, you know, the way the lugs come down over the wrist. It just works pretty good. I mentioned this before, but this is like, I think universally like a well-proportioned and fitting watch, despite the very straight, somewhat slab-sided nature of the case and the, of course, the very blocky and angular lugs. It still manages to fit. Doesn't overhang the wrist, at least not mine, and it comes down nicely. And I personally recommend the H-Link. I mean, not the H-Link, that's the other one. It costs a little bit less, but I think this Fine Link is probably better made. It feels nice and solid, really good. And, you know, I think it plays a sporty and can actually do a bit of dress duty with the bracelet as well. And lastly, similar deployment clasp system as the Zelos. Again, typical micro brand fare, or anyone in general, but 40 millimeters, same as the Zelos, but you know, if you want to back up and compare, that one does look smaller. And like I said, the bezel itself is 38.5, and the dial itself, even though the bezel ring is actually thin too, it's still kind of on the small side. Well, maybe not as small as this guy, because this bezel is thicker. Compared to this, you can see kind of a difference there. And the case on this, on the NTHs, are really nice too. I'll try to back up so you can. I can't push my finger and make it focus. I have to press the screen. It shows how tired and late I am, because it is near 1 a.m. I was trying to watch The Mandalorian tonight, but I think I'm going to be too damn tired to pay attention, and I really would like to watch the whole thing through. Anyways, nice and thin on wrist. So yeah, I mean, this is just pretty casual comparison, and I just thought, oh wait, I think some people might like to see these particular watches. Like, this isn't particularly new, and at this point, this is not actually all that new too. It's been out for at least half a year in 2020, and this one was, geez, even older, although this is kind of a recent buyback. But I owned this before, I guess, from a year before. Had it for a while. My taste changed, and I guess that's why I sold it, just try something else. But I always thought about this and always wanted to come back to it, and I did. And although, no, just faced with a choice of, if I could, I'd keep them all, but I need to choose one. And likely for me, because this has stronger black and white elements, like around the, not just on the dial, but on but on the bezel, that speaks to me more, because I used to own a dive watch that had basically this white dial and black bezel combination, which I lost. I had that for like 12 years straight, and I was a tag heuer, but in a quartz diver, but I really loved that watch, and I don't know where the heck I misplaced it. after I moved into a new house, but that's the way it is. And so that's why I would prefer to keep one of these over this one, although this one is really well made, got drilled luck holes as opposed to these that don't. Easily serviceable with the Miyota movement, accurate, reliable movement anyways. Most Miyotas are always like that as far as I've ever experienced. Really gives Seiko and Edo a good run for the money, even though some people bitch that it's supposed to be a cheap or inexpensive movement, but so what? It still runs great. And the cost of a watch is more than just the movement. Design, build, marketing, and all the other stuff that you probably don't care about, but they need to be accounted for as well in pricing out watches, right? It's not just the watch itself, as much as it seems like that's all that you're supposedly buying. Let me see. I guess that's it. I'm gonna try to close out with a Lume shot. And then out of all these, this one actually comes with I believe a tropic strap too, but these two don't. You're gonna have to buy other strap options for yourself. So let me close the lights out. Let me pause this and just return with the. Okay, so just trying to put it more in the dark here. There you go. You should be able to see the numbers on the top too, but they are rather fine. See? Sorry if I blinded you. There you go. It's kind of full effect of this one. This one's probably the most basic, but effective. It's not blue. It should show up as green. It's the color balance. And Leslie, all blue. Pretty cool effect. And to compare the two, full Lume dials. And this actually has a Lume crown too. You can see there, kind of. I'd say this one still, the bezel is just barely legible at night, although you see, well, especially the small numbers up top, but you might be able to just make them out, though you really shouldn't be reading another time zone in the dark much anyways, if that's that important to you. But I'd say between the two full Lume dials, this one works better just because that green of the C3X1, if I recall, stands out against that blue, obviously. More importantly is when it goes dark or dimmer. The watches are still visible, but because this is still green, the important parts of the hour markers and the minute and hour hands stand out still, while the blue is dimmer. The green is just brighter and also contrasts. It's not the same. Versus this one, once it dims to basically the same level, I find that from my eyesight at least, the cathedral hands aren't quite thick enough. And because the blue of the dial and the hands dim to the same level, it kind of camouflages itself. So it's kind of hard to see or discern once it's gone pretty dim, but it's still visible, but at the same dimness, to see exactly where the hands are and where they're pointing at. It does take a while to kind of focus in and kind of get an idea of the slight differences in tonality in the dark of the blue and whatnot to discern the time. So I would say that's probably the main, although it looks pretty glorious once you fully charged it. And it does hold up actually in the dark. this doesn't really truly represent what I'm seeing at night usually. If I could see the hands this clearly, that'd be great, but usually it all evens out, including the dial, so you almost don't see the hands. So yeah, it gets hard to read. They had either made these green, like what Zelos did. That would probably help. Otherwise, at least, excuse me, if they had at least thickened up the handset, or enlarged them, or both, just a bit more, that might have helped to just give a shape, a dark shape in the dark, to help you kind of focus and see exactly where the time is at. So something to note, but still a cool watch. It looks great in the day, and especially coming into transition when you just kind of get the silver, but you still got that blue glowing out from it. It's a nice effect, and I think it's unique. You don't see too many California dials. And oh, by the way, probably too hard to see here, but let me turn the lights back on real quick. Before my thing runs out of memory. This actually has a slight graininess to the dial. Not sure if it's picking up on the final video here. Not, but it gives it almost I wouldn't call it snowflake, but a kind of frosted look, almost like snow, but on a very small scale across. So that's kind of neat. It's not actually just a matte white dial. There's a bit of texturing on there. Versus this is basically a matte white dial. This, on the other hand, is you can see it's glossy. It almost looks like enamel or porcelain. And the way it's printed is so fine, and it's got a 3D-ness to it. You can see it by the reflection off of the outlines on the indices, the indexes themselves, like the little small fine ones. The text here, the logo Zinn text, right? It's just really nicely printed. This is alright. I mean, it does the job. I don't say the actual printing is, I would say, is amazing. It's pretty basic font, just lines. They're not really as 3D, at least I don't catch any reflections coming off of them. Those small indexes between the main ones. And then you got the 24-hour in orange with some black lines to represent the odd numbers. But I mean, it does the job, but it's nothing super fantastic. I'm just glad that they have applied indices, and more importantly, the frames around them. It's not silver or chrome, but they used like a dark, almost like gunmetal, polished gunmetal look. So in most lights it looks black, but that just helps with the legibility, because if they were silver or something, they probably wouldn't read as well and get lost depending on what kind of light it's or surface area is reflecting. And just to go over the handset, it's blued. Whether the really heat blued or not, I'm not sure, but it sure looks damn convincing to me. I mean, the pop of blue, like when it gets really intense, looks like what heat blued hands would be like. And the second hand is gold. You see my review on this, like I did a while back. The color combination, this whole design motif is inspired by, like, basically, I believe the Rolex Zerograph. Look it up. It's pretty interesting history. And more important watch than people give it credit for, I think. Both for a dive watch as well as a chronograph. But anyways, that's it. I wish I had done this in a more stable format than what I have here, but I'm super busy and I just try to get these out when I can. So I hope it's been at least somewhat informative and just something cool to look at and visually compare between 3 white dial watches. You know? Did I say anything about the bezel? I forget, but I can tell you, and this has the nice click as NTH does. I'm just going to go over it again because I forget if I did, because I did try to do this video earlier. It always lines up. There. This one, it's like it's on ball bearings. Very smooth, deliberate. It just falls right into place with no play. I like that. Versus this one has a proper 48 click. This was 60, obviously, and this is 120. 48, so you can land in a half hour. But again, if I didn't mention it earlier, it's a little bit, it's got a slight bit of play. See? I mean, it lands into the whatever ball bearing stop or whatever you want to call it. It's supposed to, but it does have a slight play. But again, it's close enough on the marker where you're not, if it does get wiggled, you know you're still gonna know where it's pointing at. It's not that far off. Something to note, it's not as clean and precise as Zen, and I think feeling it, it's a little bit, besides that, the kind of shakiness to it, slight bit when you hit the mark, you know that's, you can feel that looseness just ever slightly. It could use some lubrication. It feels like there's a little bit of friction going on. And it's not terrible, but again, could be refined and the grip improved, I think, because it's not that grippy considering, you know, you get enough, but I feel that you do have to put that little extra effort from keeping your fingers from slipping. Whereas this definitely has positive grip, and this one, even though it's high polish, it's just smooth to click between each of the 60 points, whichever ones. Alright, this is getting long enough, so that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next. Thanks, bye.